welcome everyone. Always like to see that people are interested in attending these webinars, so we have a chance to talk about our product a little bit. This is a very specific category we're going to cover today, and probably for most of you, you're in the position where this is of interest, and that's why you're here. And that is, you've got an older voicemail. It's reaching end of life with all those implications on support and maintenance costs, and so now you're trying to decide where to go from there. So certainly the timing is such, I think, that the way that products were introduced in the market years ago and the way the manufacturers have sort of come up with a strategy, this is a year where a large number of older legacy call processing systems become risky to leave in. Avaya has issued some end-of-sale notices on some of their more recent products, and this is just a copy of the Avaya end-of-sale notice, and you notice the CallPilot that goes end-of-sale next year, but that's kind of telling you that if it's in its last year, you want to consider how much you would want to invest in it if you're looking at any changes or additions. And then, of course, modular messaging, that actually went effective end of sale last week. And same kind of thing. If you have a modular messaging, while it still can get service, there still would be issues in terms of you planning on any growth or anything along those lines. And then some of the older products have been end of life, end of sale, and end of support for quite a while, and now they're actually coming up on cases where their functionality is going to be at risk. Certainly, the older Avaya ARIA systems basically have issues already with dates. They're not largely service affecting yet, but they're just an irritant. But come next year, basically the calendar gets reset and they become space heaters as opposed to an appliance that's actually doing anything. And even if between now and then you're going to consider keeping those systems, they're still very difficult to maintain. Most of you, if you have maintenance contracts on them at all, they are best effort contracts, meaning the vendor says they'll come out and take a look at it, but they can't guarantee anything. They can't, of course, go to the manufacturer for support. They can't go to anywhere to get parts other than out on the gray market. And waiting for your call processing system to come back up based on somebody searching eBay all the time looking for that spare drive, just not a good business decision. So I think there's a lot of you that are in a position where you understand you have to do something about this. And there's a couple of different paths that people take. We're going to kind of talk about the way people look at this and make sure you're keeping all the factors in mind as you do it. And some people ask us, so why are you asking? Why are you talking about it? Who makes you the experts? And we are sort of the experts because back when you bought those legacy voicemail systems, we were in business selling our systems as well. We were founded in 1982, and by 1985, we were out selling our product, and we've been selling it continuously ever since. We have lots and lots of users, lots of companies actually that put the product in 1985, and the users recorded their name and greeting, and they're still using that recorded name and greeting today. So in terms of longevity, nobody really equals us in the market. You could have bought that product in 1985 and it, continuously be using it and be getting new software versions on it, new features added to it. So that makes us a pretty good player in talking about how you go from a legacy voicemail system with a specific set of features to a newer voicemail system that has new features but also that maintains those older features. And if you look at kind of what we do in the market over the years, while we've had this product that we've grown, certainly the focus of the applications that we deliver has shifted around. I mean, we were voicemail in the very earliest days, and then call processing with menus, and we added fax, we added IVR, and we just sort of kept going and following the industry. And we now have kind of three focus areas. We have personal applications. We're going to talk about some of those today as well. We have team-based applications, some of which are very unique. We have a product called TeamQ that's it's completely unique on the market. And if you see a webinar coming up from that one, I think most people would enjoy that webinar just because it's something new and interesting. And then we have core enterprise or business focus call processing kind of functions as well. And as we look at maintaining these, it's an interesting market. if we look at how we're going to allocate our research dollars and our engineering dollars, there's a couple of things going on, and one of the big ones is the replacement of the applications today. That's a big part of our business, a big part of our focus. We're going to talk about what we've done in the product to show you why we think we're a good player in the market of replacing legacy voicemail systems. But at the same time, we can't ignore what's going on in terms of the infrastructure, which includes interest in cloud, hybrid cloud, full cloud, everything, migrations to IP infrastructure. Some of you might be replacing your legacy voicemails this year and having to face the same kind of challenges next year for your telephony infrastructure. There's a lot of interest in Link as a phone system out there. So we have to pay attention to all of that. And then on top of that, the whole new applications in the UC market is also a major driving factor for us. And we're going to look a little bit at some of these, just because it's good to know that when you replace your legacy voice messaging system, there'll be other things that can come along with it, or at least that you could consider a future and make sure that you're positioning yourselves for that. We do extremely well in this market for a couple of reasons. We'll look at the features. That's a good piece of what we do to make us an ideal choice. We are the preferred player in legacy voicemail replacement systems. There's really no doubt about that. But we also have the best interoperability in the market. And what that means is the people who deal with our product can walk in any door and get a presentation and sit down and tell that prospective customer all the great things our product does. And it doesn't come with a list of things you would have to change out in your infrastructure. We're not going to tell you we don't work with your email because you're moving into the cloud, or because you have an older group-wise or something along those lines. We're not going to tell you have to upgrade your PBX to an IP version to get all our functionality. Everything we have works on every phone system out there. We have deliberately engineered ourselves to be PBX and infrastructure agnostic. And all of the things that we do work in all the environments. And so that not only means when we come in and talk to you, we're going to be able to say, yes, we work in that environment you have today, but we're also not going to lock you in any way. If you buy our solution today to replace that legacy voicemail system, and down the road in a year you decide, oh, I have to change my infrastructure. I'm going to move to a voice over IP phone system. I'm going to move Exchange to the cloud, or pick up Gmail in the cloud. All of those type of things are just programming changes on our system. So it's good to know that as you focus on replacing your legacy voicemail system, you are choosing your UC platform for the future, and interoperability is a big piece of that decision. So one of the things we're going to do today is look at a couple of customer stories in terms of people that facing the same things you're facing, infrastructure that was going out of support, and there's kind of two customers we're going to talk about here and how they approach doing that. And City of Baltimore is one of them. City of Baltimore is very interesting. As many of you might be government entities, but certainly the pressure on the government to lower costs without reducing services has been very strong for the last 5 to 10 years. And so a lot of government entities have gotten very good at using technology, and Baltimore is certainly one of those. And Baltimore went out with an extremely thorough evaluation of what was on the market. They knew what they had, they knew what they needed to replace, and they had a pretty good idea of where they were going. So they really wanted a system that wouldn't just take the functionality they needed to replace and move it to a platform that could be supported, but they had some future needs as well. So one of the first things they did was ask us for references. And one of the great things about having been in business for this long is we have references in the customer's area, physically area, location, in their market space, in their size range, with their phone system, with their email. We just have so many references that we can match up a customer and let them talk to people who went through the same process they're going through, made a decision, went with AVST, came out the other side, and now they have a story to tell. So in the process of evaluating us, long before they picked us, but in the early evaluation stage, the University of Maryland was one of the references, and the Johns Hopkins University. Fairly local kind of people, very similar environments, although the size ranges were a little different. And from those references, that just really gained us a chance to go in and talk to them and do some testing they were very thorough in what they wanted to see before they made a decision. And they had done their homework. They knew exactly what their challenges were, what they had to solve. And they had 4 of them. They had to replace their legacy Octel system. It was out of support, and they didn't feel comfortable that they were, really doing due diligence in terms of supporting their customers by having a system that if it broke, they couldn't necessarily get it back online. They knew down the road they had a transition to voice over IP coming. They knew that because of the number of business applications that they were handling with call processing, that they had much higher than normal call volumes. And one of the biggest challenges facing them, and this is probably true for every customer out there, was mobility. More and more people are not sitting at a desk, and it's harder to deliver the critical communication services to people when they're out and about using various devices. So they started by looking at the legacy voicemail replacement side of it, and we were able to give them all kinds of customers who had gone through that same process and talked about what it was like to deploy our system. They liked our licensing model. They liked the fact that we could duplicate the Octel ARIA telephone user interface, so minimum disruption to the business as it cut over. That's a very key piece. Lots of systems have alternate telephone user interfaces. None of them are as accurate as ours are. And we actually have documents where it lines up the various interfaces plus our emulation side by side. So long before you even move to them, you have a very good feeling for how different they're going to be, and that gives you an idea for what it would take to roll those out. So having been fairly well satisfied by our references in terms of our ability to replace their legacy system, the next thing they wanted to talk about was one of their futures, which they knew they were going to be transitioning to VoIP. What they didn't know is exactly how that was going to go. As with all customers, there were various camps that had various ideas about the way to do this. This is a major infrastructure change. Obviously, in any organization, it takes a long time. There's a long incubation period of everybody figuring out, what problems can be solved by what systems. So we were able to sit in front of them and say, when you buy the replacement system today and hook it to your legacy infrastructure, regardless of what you do in terms of moving to an IP infrastructure, the CXE system will move along with you. We not only have all the old traditional integrations that we use in the legacy environments, but we have a full suite of the newer IP integrations. On basically any product out there that supports an IP integration, we're able to take that system and connect to it. And we do a great transition move where you can have your legacy environment, you can start bringing up your IP environment, you can connect the CXE system to both at the same time. Not just for testing, but if you have a plan that says I'm migrating my users from the standard environment to a voice over IP environment, and that migration is going to take a year, well, CX can be the bridge platform to help with communications, because you can connect CXE up to 10 different types of phone systems at once. And that makes those transitions a lot easier to plan and a lot safer. So they didn't feel they'd be locked in if they went with CXE. On the call volume side, they did have a very complex type of caller and menuing system. They had over 100 active menus. Now, it's not unlike a customer when we deal with them and we go look at their system to see people with 50 or 100 menus. Generally, though, when we go through those, they say most of those aren't used anymore. But Baltimore actually had 100 active menus, and these menus did lots of things that were critical. This was one of the ways they reduced their cost of operating, was to sort of screen with the front end with menus to eliminate the amount of information where people had to talk with a human being to decide where to go. And they liked the fact that we not only could duplicate everything they had on their Octel system, but we could speech enable it as well. And that was something they were very, very interested in. So they cut over very smoothly. They're a great reference if anyone wants to talk to them. I think we actually have a printed business case on them as well. And they take about 120,000 calls a month, doing everything they did before, plus some of the new functionality. Now, the last challenge was more of a challenge because mobility is just such a complex issue. It includes the bring-your-own-device functionality that people are looking for, all the devices, how frequently the devices change, the security issues of using a mobile device where you're actually putting information out there. You need to make sure you're doing it in a safe way. So one of the things they liked was the fact that we actually have a security focus with a bundle of applications called ATOM, AVST Total Office Manager, where we take all the functionalities a mobile user wants, package them together, and deliver them in such a fashion that it's not only secure and easy to use, but it's very easy to manage. And the kind of things we do for mobility are what people expect, but we also do some things that are new and interesting that most of our customers take advantage of. One of the things that we do, we believe users inherently don't want to do much to maintain a call processing and a messaging application. They consider it a tool and it should just work. And that means while they could get a better experience by recording a new greeting every day and redirecting their phone calls to their mobile device when they leave the office, those kind of things, they probably won't do that. So we decided a long time ago it's perfectly reasonable for us to do that for them using context. Context is just a fancy way of saying there are pieces of information within the organization that we can get to and use to not only route calls more efficiently, but build better greetings for the callers on the fly. And one of the easy examples of this to look at is the calendar. If you have an Exchange calendar, Office 365, a Google Apps calendar, we can actually hook CXE up to it. We can also hook it up to Microsoft Link, and we can use that information to make decisions. So a call comes in for Robert Johnson, and the system says I'm supposed to transfer it to him, and he has a set of rules, and he has a calendar override rule that says if I'm in a meeting, I don't want you to send the call to my desk. I want you to play a custom greeting to the caller. In this case, I'm actually going to tell the caller what time I'm getting out of the meeting. And then I would have a choice to send it to voicemail, or if he had our mobile application, we could actually do a little data pop-up on the mobile application so he could silently screen his incoming calls while he's in a meeting. So those kind of context applications are really unique to our product, and they go a long way to completing more calls and giving the callers better experience. Probably one of the simplest things you can do to give yourself better call completion is put our mobile app on your device, and we support a mobile app for iOS or Android devices, and then program the relevant locations for you. And typically people program their office, so now that mobile phone knows when you're in the office. We'll see how it does that in a second. In my case, I also have programmed home as a location. So now if I'm at home, my CXE system knows that, and it can play a different greeting, and it can transfer that call to a different client. In my case, I use the Link client when I'm at home. My phone would also tell them that I'm in the office when I'm there and transfer it to my desk phone. So that location-based service is automatic. Once I program it, the user will get the calls on the right device based on their location. And setting up locations is very easy. They go to the device. The administrator says what types of locations are allowed to the users, and then the user can go in and pair up. And this is the case of Bothell, happens to be where our engineering office is, up here outside of Seattle. I went in and I connected to our internet, and then I went on and I did geofencing or triangulation, where I actually read the cell towers, and now I map this location. When a call comes in for me, my system will ping my mobile phone and say, is he in the office? And if the result is yes, then I have a set of rules for how to handle calls. If the result is no, then I have a different set of rules for handling calls. So this is not a tracking application where anybody knows where you are at any specific time. This is simply an application that when calls come in, we can ping that phone and get an idea where you are and what device would be appropriate. Mobility is just such a big piece of keeping productive and keeping in touch with your customers today. So we have a lot of mobility apps. We have separate webinars where we cover all the mobility. We're just going to kind of go through and skim the surface on a couple of them. Our mobile clients I talked about we have for iOS. They do messaging. They do that location feature. They do incoming calls. They do outgoing calls. They do silent call screening. A great range of applications. If you're someone who is away from your desk. So mobility doesn't just have to be out of the building. Just away from your desk a large part of the time. You should see if you can get on one of our mobile applications webinars and see what the product can do for you in that area. Same thing for administration. We have a great administration client, but it's a Windows 32 client. In this case, we have a smaller client so people can actually do important program changes if they don't happen to be in the office. We actually built this originally for UCLA. And UCLA, when they were out and about in the campus, one of the deans would call and say, I've locked myself out of my mailbox, and rather than having to get to somewhere where they could do admin, they could go to any mobile device, any small format browser, unlock that mailbox, reset the security code, etc. We also have great call screening. If you were to call me, and let's say I'm in my car and I'm headed to work, and I would answer the call and say, "You have a call from Robert Johnson. Please say accept, reject, or acknowledge." If I was just pulling into the parking lot, I might not want to take that call and then sit in my car and handle it. So I might say acknowledge, and it would ask me to record an acknowledgement message. And I'd say, "Yeah, listen, Robert, I'm just heading into the office. Give me 10 minutes to get up and sit down at my desk, and I'll give you a call back." And Robert would hear, "Neil Butler was unable to take your call, but left you this personal message." So a much more personal touch to callers, plus something that you don't normally get in a phone call, and that's the ability to decide whether that incoming call is more or less important than what you're already doing. And that's like such a great tool to keep you productive and yet take care of your important callers. And as I mentioned before, we do the same thing on a silent basis by using our mobile client. So I can actually sit in meetings, and so many of us sit in meetings and triage our incoming email because, let's face it, there are things that are important enough we just have to know about them sometimes, even if we're in a meeting. But phone calls, we've always had to just kind of shun those and send those to voicemail. We now can actually get pop-ups that are silent pop-ups on the mobile device when we're sitting in meetings. It'll show who's calling, anyone on the system or anyone in your contacts. It'll actually show who's calling. And you have those same choices. You can take that call, acknowledge that call. There's a silent acknowledge feature where if I hit a button, it'll let me play one of 4 prompts to the caller. I hit that, and Robert would hear, "Neil Butler was unable to take your call, but we'll call you back in 30 minutes, something along those lines. So great tools. And all these tools work regardless of where you are. The mobility piece, as long as you have some sort of connection, you're going to be able to basically have a virtual desktop through your phone. The ability to do the same kind of things you can do at your desktop through the phone. And one of the ways we make that possible and easy to do is through a speech interface. You really can't be very productive if all you have is DTMF. So CXE basically can be equipped for a full speech interface that lets users never have to hit their phone. Not only is this a much safer way to do it when you're driving, it's in most places the only legal way to do it, and it's a very intuitive interface. This is not much, some of our competition has a 1 or a 2 or a 3-year-old speech product. This is a 15-year-old speech product. So believe me, it's not only very robust, but it's well thought through in terms of easy to use. So the mobility piece is a piece that the people in Maryland are looking at rolling out. They started with a small number of users. This is not something where you roll it out for everyone. Obviously, everyone doesn't need it. But it's good to know when you pick your legacy voicemail replacement system today, you certainly are going to make sure it does those legacy features you need. But keep in mind, that's your unified communications platform for the next 10 years. Make sure you're getting something that will take you into the future easily. University of Toronto had a different set of problems. It started with the same legacy issue where they had to replace their older systems, but they also wanted to centralize. They had 3 campuses, 3 different phone systems in them, 3 different voicemails in them, and it was just very expensive to maintain, very time-consuming, and it was very limited from the users because despite the fact they had 3 campuses across town, they weren't really islands from a worker point of view. People needed to communicate across them. And they were also looking at going to unified messaging. So the first part was easy with our architecture. We were actually able to deploy components from a single CX system out at all 3 of their sites. So we put 2 call servers with 12 ports each out at each of their remote campuses. We tied them back to the main system at their main campus in St. George, where they had 4 call servers and a single control server, and now they had a completely unified system. All users could use all parts of it. If you had an office in 2 of the offices or 2 of the campuses, you could have all phones pointing to your single mailbox. This was a great solution for them. It met exactly. They had one of the most complex RFP processes that I've ever gone through in terms of they brought a consultant on board, and they were very specific about what they wanted, and by the time they were done, they knew exactly what they were getting. Now, one of the things they didn't take advantage of Well, with this architecture, any component can fail, and you're not out of business. If one of the call servers at a remote campus fails, you lost some capacity, but you're still up and going. One of the things they didn't do, which they've evaluated doing in the future, is actually to take some more redundancy on board. This is sort of the basic. If a call server fails, then everything else keeps on working, so you're still taking calls. If the system server fails, the call servers continue to work. They're highly survivable. They'll answer the call. They'll run all the applications, speech rec, automated attendant, custom IVR applications, messaging, everything, play all the greetings to the callers, and record new messages. But the messages are actually stored on the system server. Since if the system server is down or the network connection's down, the call server can't connect to that server, it caches those messages. They're not available until the system server comes back up. But from the outside caller's point of view, everything's working fine. What can be done for customers is to add a second system server in passive mode, and that system server just sits there. It's being updated real time by the active system server, and if the active system server fails, that one steps in automatically and takes over. You don't lose calls in progress. You can still get to messages. So that basically gives you full redundancy. No matter what fails, everything keeps on working. To take it one step further, you actually could put either that second system server or a third system server remotely to have full geo-redundancy. So with this architecture, if I lost Site 1 completely, if somebody with a backhoe took out my fiber entrance cable into the building and told me it was going to be 5 days before they could get me connected again, I actually could promote the remote system server. It would come up, it would connect to all the call servers it could still find, and you'd be back in business. So everything from every feature we have running on a single physical server right out to complete geo-redundancy, it's just a matter of what you're looking for. You build your disaster recovery plan, we match our components to it. Their second challenge was unified messaging. Unified messaging is a challenge for a lot of people for a lot of reasons today. Some of them are simply capacity issues and concern over the network and using the servers, the email servers to store messages. Some of them are more legal type issues like compliance and confidentiality. University of Toronto had a confidentiality issue where there are certain people that if they have voicemail messages that have information about students, they didn't think it was a good idea to put those into email. Healthcare faces the same issue as well, where they're just not comfortable storing messages, someplace where they can get out of the system. So fortunately, we were able to talk about unified messaging from a flexibility point of view. The message store can be configured on a per-user basis, either to put the messages into the email store or leave them on our store. Either way, we have multiple clients that let you get to those messages remotely. We have flexible notification options, where even if you don't put the messages into the email store, we can send you an email telling you you have a new voicemail. That can include links. So we are recognized by Gartner as the leader in unified messaging. We have a whole other webinar on unified messaging where we go through it. We were able to easily satisfy what University of Toronto needed. If we look at this process of replacing a legacy voicemail system, we understand in a lot of cases what the customer really wants is a like-for-like replacement with minimum business disruption. And we can do that. We have all the legacy features. We're really the best in the business at doing a smooth and easy transition. But we also like to have the discussions to remind the customer that this platform you're buying needs to take you into the future. It needs to have a good, solid mobility strategy. It needs to be able to take you into the new UC-type applications. Even if you don't deploy them today, it's worth your time to make sure that that platform you're looking at can deliver that kind of functionality. And in many cases, it's important to know it can deliver it regardless of your current or future business environment. And this takes us to the absolute favorite slide in every presentation, the question screen.
Thanks.
How are we doing for questions, Ann?
We have several, actually. First question, so how close are the alternate TUIs to the actual system? So we have Octel and Audix.
So the best thing to do is contact us, and we'll send you the guides. You can look at them. I will tell you, here's how they're designed. For messaging functions, they're keystroke perfect. In other words, that first day as a user, I can log into my mailbox. I can listen to all my messages, save them, forward them, send new messages, address them to multiple recipients. All those keystrokes will be the same. Top to bottom, we have mapped that menu. That's what makes it so much better than most of the other alternate TUIs, where they just tend to map a top level. What isn't perfectly emulated are the mailbox setup features. And the reason is we have so many more features than those legacy systems do that they're sort of flat key mapping when you got into set up your mailbox options, ran out of keys too early if we tried to emulate it. So there is some difference in that area. Now, honestly, what happens in most customers is they deploy our web application, web phone manager, and the users maintain their mailbox from a web app instead of over the phone. But that's the only real difference. I really suggest that if that's something that's of concern, you get in touch with us and we'll send you the comparison guide, and you can literally go right down and see, oh, here's what I press on mine to delete. Oh, press the same thing on theirs. And you can go through and it'll give you a nice, comfortable feeling.
Okay, great. So next question, what is AVST's view on voice messages being exempt from discovery?
We would be silly to have a view. And the reason is, first of all, that's a legal question, and I don't believe too many of us here are lawyers. But secondly, it's a very confusing issue because, as far as I know, no one's really ever taken that to court. So there's a lot of terminology out there. If you look at Sarbanes-Oxley, which talks about e-documents and discovery, it doesn't say voicemail. It doesn't specifically say if I put a voicemail into my email, that becomes discoverable. I'm also not telling you that it says if you put it in there because it's not an email, it's not discoverable. All I can tell you is you need to decide exactly what you feel safe with, what you want to do, and then our product will let you do that. So I would say there's three types of customers in general. I talk to customers and they say, oh, we don't care, we just put them all in email. It's just too easy that way. That way our mobile users get them. That's what we're going to do, period. I talk to other customers, and these tend to be more industry specific, that say, there's no way we're going to put voice messages into email and expand our legal liability and even have to have that discussion with whether they're discoverable or not. So the answer is a flat out no. And then there's the ones in the middle that say, okay, like healthcare. Well, those people who have messages with patient information in them, we're not going to store those messages in. But for the administrative staff, because of the extra productivity features, we are. From our point of view, you can mix and match any way you want and change it anytime you want. So while we can't really help you with the question about what's legal and what's not, once you decide what you want to do, we definitely can match the solution to take care of what you've decided you need.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Next, can the system be virtualized?
Yes. We support VMware. Every component of CX can be virtualized. We support the high-end features like DR and HA and vMotion. One thing to keep in mind, on an older legacy phone system, we may have to deploy hardware to connect to that, the system that's not SIP capable, let's say. And that hardware obviously can't be virtualized. So you have a choice of leaving one of the servers out of the virtualization and putting line cards in it, or virtualizing everything we have and using a media gateway, a dialogic media gateway, to convert that legacy signal to a SIP signal. But either way, all the functionality of CX can be virtualized.
Okay, next question. Using the mobile client, where are the messages coming from? The email box or a different location?
So the way this works is if you're going to store your messages in email, you already have an email client on your mobile phone that's getting those. They'll get our voice messages and play them as well. If you don't want to put them in email, you want to leave them on the CX, then our mobile client will see those voice messages. And by the way, we're more secure in the way we do that than the email people are. So when you open up our client, you look at your voice messages, they're not really on the phone. There's a header list that we download. You click play, we stream that message and play it to you. As soon as you leave that message and go to a different page, that copy's deleted. So if you leave your device somewhere, there's no messages stored on it. So it's actually a more secure implementation.
Okay, next question is actually back on the topic of the alternate TUIs. Can you use multiple TUIs on a single system? And what about user preference?
So we do not allow the users to choose. because that's a support issue. But once you buy the alternate telephone user interface, then the administrator can assign any interface to any user.
Neil, do you want to go ahead and wrap us up?
I just have my kind of standard sign-off where we really do appreciate you taking the time to come and listen. We know that's hard to take that time out of your business day. Please let us know. We have great feedback response where not only do we get back to your questions like this, but if you get back and say, hey, I'd like a webinar talking about this part of your product, or could we get a more in-depth dive on this, or could you do a general overview that talks about everything? You give us that kind of feedback, and we will take care of creating the kind of communications that you want to see from us. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah, and with that in mind, you can always send feedback or follow-up questions to our general inbox, which is info@avst.com. We'll get that to the right person. And have a great day, everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.